There are only two masters that we know of who've come to Earth from the planet Saturn. Lord Babaji came here at the very beginning of the birth of Earth. He's been here ever since, and we're told he'll stay here until the end. I mean, that whole move that was made that Yogananda describes, that's just one thing, one aspect of that vast intelligence whose responsibilities, if we knew them, we couldn't conceive that any one individual could manage it. I'm going to say that actually the Lord Babaji can be one of the greatest warriors that's ever walked the earth. Warriors. And has proved it. And
hello and welcome back to the Spiritual Freedom Show with Richard Lawrence. My name is Darren Bull, and this is the podcast helping you to awaken your chakras, to unlock your psychic powers, and to discover true spirituality. Now, you may have heard of the Lord Babaji from Yogananda's Autobiography of a Yogi, but even these revelations are just a fraction of the truth about this great being. So in this episode, Rich and I peel back the veil of mystery that has surrounded this master of masters for millennia to reveal truths that you will not find anywhere else, such as where the Lord Babaji came from 3 billion years ago, his real mission to Earth, which is not about us, and the essential role that he has played in our spiritual evolution for the last 18 million years. Even the unique mountain where he is reported to reside, and the role that he has played in divine intervention on Earth. Richard.
Darren.
So I think many people know the great spiritual figure who's the focus of our show today, from Yogananda's Autobiography of a Yogi, primarily, probably.
Yeah.
Which is the Lord Babaji.
Yeah.
But I do feel, having read that book and been involved with the Self-Realization Fellowship, that even this great homage that Yogananda pays to him, and the many stories and quotes that are given from the various saints and sages which he reports, is still just a paltry reflection, really, of the greatness of this being, and even the full scope of his responsibility and role that he plays on Earth. And that's why I wanted to do this show with you today. I think to reveal more for people listening about who he really is.
Yes.
Beyond, even as he's portrayed as a great Indian saint, something much more than this. And something that goes right to the very heart of our spiritual evolution on Earth and the pivotal role that he plays in that. So maybe we could just start with just sort of expanding people's idea of who the Lord Babaji actually is and the role that he plays on Earth today.
Lord Babaji is the most wonderful, glorious master who's on Earth that we know of. There are three intelligences actually within Earth who are connected to the Earth, lords of the flame of the Mother Earth, who are even greater. But we know little about them other than that they exist and that they are wonderful, highly advanced intelligences. But that aside, there is no master on Earth greater. There are only two masters that we know of who've come to Earth from the planet Saturn, which is the highest of all the planets. Sri Krishna came from there. He had an extremely difficult mission to perform. He had to somehow, through his advice, using some powers, but he must have been limited as to what powers he could use, maintain the civilization of humanity beyond the ends of Atlantis.
Yeah,
and he succeeded brilliantly. Yeah. And he was a very cunning, we talked about him before, I believe cunning, highly brilliant, manipulative in the right way, master to bring this about. The Lord Babaji is the other one. He didn't come here for humanity. That's something we need to remember.
True.
Lord Babaji came here at the very beginning of the birth of Earth. He's been here ever since, and we're told he'll stay here until the end of her life. This tells me anyway, I would say, in my opinion, he came here for the planet. But his, as it were, inverted commas, province seems to be the surface of Earth, not the inner flame. He's linked to the Lords. He is linked to the Mother Earth, very much so. But his governance, if that's the right word, is the surface. It might well include everything on the surface, for all I know, all the Devic realms as well. Yeah. But certainly, at the very minimum, the masters of Earth, and through them, the human race. So we've talked before about Shambala, and when humanity came to Earth, Sanat Kumara came to Earth as well, some 18 million years ago, on Shambala to preserve the consciousness, provide the right energy transmission, guidance, leadership of consciousness on Earth. the Shambala being described as the crown center of Earth. I believe that would be the consciousness of people on Earth, life on Earth. But, Lord Babaji was here way before that.
Yeah.
So, and I think we should revere him with every fiber of our being. We are, humility is a vital thing for all of us, certainly for me, I can assure you. And I think it's got lost. A lot of people, it's important to have confidence in yourself and various things like that. And there's a time to be assertive, but there's a time to be very humble. And this show that we're doing now is one of those times. Lord Babaji is someone we should revere completely. We should follow, if we're allowed to and able to, completely. All governments of Earth should defer 100% to the Lord Babaji. They don't even believe in him, never mind defer to him. They should give, not that I'm sure he particularly wanted, governing all these countries, but they should completely abide by his every word, his every inflection, his every utterance, and if they were capable, his every thought.
Yeah, I mean, it really starts to paint a picture far beyond what I think is told previously.
Yeah.
I mean, reading other texts about him before coming to the theory side, everything is sort of tied up with the history of humanity and our own spiritual evolution and the fact that he is a great master helping in that. But as you say, I mean, we've been here for 0.0001% of the time that he has been here.
Yeah.
He was here long before we were.
Yeah.
Probably, perhaps before it was even seen that we would ever come. I mean, even our entire history with the coming of Shambala and Sanat Kumara is just 18 million years.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about the beginning of Earth, that's 3.5, maybe
nothing.
billion years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
flash in the pan.
Yeah, it's literally
of his existence.
Yeah.
Which is obviously massive, a massive existence.
But what about his role now with humanity being here?
Yeah. Well, can I come back to something you said there?
Sure.
Which is that, he gets underrated and lots of talk about Lord Babaji. Babaji is a name. It means, I believe, Holy Father, which is the name they give the Pope, actually, in English or in Latin.
Yeah,
whatever.
okay.
And it's used by others. So there's a lot of misidentifications of the Lord Babaji.
Of people who aren't the Lord Babaji.
Who aren't the Lord Babaji.
Yeah, okay.
Who are called Holy Father.
Okay.
And there are claimants, just as there are claimants to be Count Saint Germain, there are claimants to be other masters. There are a lot of claimants to be Lord Babaji. Lord Babaji is depicted very often, and Yogananda does this, as a yogi, and in his case a young yogi, in a young body anyway.
Yeah.
Not a young yogi, but in a young body. And that is one of his appearances. Myself, I have an opinion, and it's only an opinion. People can take this or leave this, it's fine. It's not in the Theorist Society teaching this. I believe one of his depictions, or one of his names, he's had, I think, multiple names, was Narada. Again, I don't say everyone who called themselves Narada was this being.
Sure, yeah.
But if you look to the old texts, and that Narada too is depicted in a youthful form. I think quite often with a musical instrument, actually, as it happens, but be that as it may. And I'm sure there are others. I mean, I think the most significant one, shall I say, which is not always correct, but is the use of the persona of the Lord Shiva. Now, Lord Shiva is depicted in many ways. Lord Shiva has more than one meaning, as does Vishnu, as does Brahma. Lord Shiva can be seen as the destroyer throughout creation. So that's not what I'm talking about, but there's also a personification of Lord Shiva as a yogi, as a great yogi, great master, who lives on Mount Kailash in the Himalayas. Mount Kailash doesn't look to me like a proper mountain.
As in, like, artificial?
It looks to me like an artifact, and people can check this out, That's just something I throw in there. And of course, Himalayas was, for millennia, for many millennia, the central pivotal point of the great masters. And masters from many cultures would go there. Even Count Saint Germain said he had to go and report to him the Himalayas. And he was from France, obviously. So this is across the board. And so it would make sense to me that some of the depictions, and not some of the stupid sort of godlike qualities that are given to Shiva, and very human traits that they stick onto him, as they do in the ancient Greeks and elsewhere, and in the Bible. You get very human traits even given to God. So he loses his temper. Had enough now, and things like that. But I think that's one of the personas. And coming to your point, and I think what's probably most interesting to you and I, and probably our viewers, is what is the Lord Babaji, because he's very present on Earth right now. More than anyone else on Earth is he present. There's no one more present on Earth now than the Lord Babaji, if people know what I mean.
Yeah, by present.
At a deeper level.
Yeah.
He's very much present. He's extremely active. He's the most active in among all of the great masters that are on Earth, ascended masters at least. He's not in, I mentioned he's from Saturn, he's not in his full form, I should stress. Now, Sri Krishna, also from Saturn, was born, although I know that some people try and paint this differently, but he was born through the womb of a woman as an avatar, as was Jesus, as was Buddha, as I'm going to say was Dr. George King, as was Confucius, as Lao Tse, and others, Hercules, and so on, Samson and others. But so he was born in that way. The Lord Babaji wasn't. The Lord Babaji came to Earth in what you might call an ascended body, but he has more than one appearance. His real appearance is not the appearance as shown in the Autobiography of a Yogi. It was a real experience. I'm not detracting from it for 1 second.
Yeah.
And he chose to appear that way. And there's a whole aspect of the Lord Babaji that's very tied into Kriya Yoga, to Kundalini, and to certain spiritual practices and developments of great significance. I mean, that whole move that was made that Yogananda describes was, I don't want to take away from it, it was very significant. I actually believe, I remember, I'm going to say, meeting Yogananda just after he died and just before I was born. It was a very close time.
Like a passing into...
Yeah. And, he had an important mission to do, and boy, did he do it. And his autobiography is still one of the things that draws people to yoga. He performed a very great mission. And one of them was to describe certain moves being made by the Lord Babaji at the time through his disciple, Lord Babaji's disciple, Lahiri Mahazaya, who was the master of Sri Yukteswar, who was the master of Yogananda, sent to be the master, or told, I think, to be the master of Yogananda by the Lord Babaji, who knew what Yogananda was capable of.
Yeah.
And Yogananda, as Dr. King has said, was flawed in certain ways. I can relate to that. Absolutely. I hold my hands up to having been very flawed in many ways. So I'm not judging in the slightest. But what Dr. King also said was that his master, Sri Yukteswar, saw his potential, and rightly. And I'm quite sure that Lord Babaji even more so did. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if now Yogananda wasn't connected to the Lord Babaji now.
Yeah.
Which is what he wanted, what he asked for.
Yes,
I think that may well have been granted, in my humble opinion. I don't know that, but I would tend to think that. But anyway, coming back to Lord Babaji, all of that, though, that whole Kriya Yoga, Kundalini focus, which is very interesting, we might come back to it, he was far more, and is far more than that, though. That's just one thing, one aspect of that vast intelligences whose responsibilities, if we knew them, I don't know them, if we did, we couldn't conceive that any one individual who is in a body on Earth could manage it. It's so enormous.
Yeah. Well, I think coming back to that, I mean, you've talked about him actually being from Saturn. I mean, what do you think it says about the sacrifice he has made in coming here to play this role on Earth? I mean, how might we understand that?
Rather than even me telling you what I think, which you can guess, I think, let me tell you more importantly, far more importantly than what I think, what Dr. King thought. Dr. King absolutely revered him, loved him. In fact, he actually said to him on one occasion, to the Lord Babaji, and this is on tape, "I've always loved you, and I always will. the love between those two masters, the reverence in which they held each other, because Lord Babaji also admired some of the moves in particular that Dr. King was making. One of them was a mission called Operation Earthlight, which the Lord Babaji adopted with his own masters, the Ascended Masters. He is, I should have said this sooner, he is in charge of all the Ascended Masters on earth.
Gotcha.
He is not only their spiritual head, and they worship's a funny word, but they revere him and would obey him and follow him unquestioningly. Maybe they'd question it, but only in the right way because they're so advanced. It'd be completely the right kind of questioning. They might have differences of opinion, but they're not differences of opinion like the opinions we have on earth.
Yeah.
They're not opinions about whether something is true. They might be opinions about how we achieve that something.
Yes, okay, yeah.
But they would follow his guidance implicitly. So he has that situation, and this mission, Operation Earthlight, which is connected to the planet, to the Mother Earth, which Dr. King devised, was taken on by the Lord Babaji. And he was very grateful to Dr. King for taking it on. As a matter of fact, there's a beautiful exchange between them. And it's published in a book written by our good friend Brian Kniep about Operation Earthlight, and these are all mental transmissions that were recorded at the time, where the Lord Babaji says, "This is another debt I owe you," to Dr. King. And Dr. King says, "Oh, no, it's not a debt at all. No, you don't owe me anything, no. I'd just be grateful for you to do it. I mean, we can't manage it, and you can." It's just a beautiful relationship. They were very different in certain regards, and you might say Dr. King was more spiritually aggressive. Let's use that term. But I'm going to say, though, that actually the Lord Babaji can be one of the greatest warriors that's ever walked the earth. Warriors, and has proved it and demonstrated it when it's necessary. But he's also demonstrated this tremendous forgiveness, tremendous detachment through the ages. He knew all about the evil that goes on here.
Yeah,
and he had to pick his time, and has picked his time to intervene. But I would say that through the personality, this is my view, the personage of the Lord Babaji, one thing you have is a personification of a change of the Lord Shiva from the destroyer, as he was depicted. And destroyer sounds wrong to a lot of people. It's not going around destroying and harming people. It's destroying the ignorance, destroying the wisdom, and thereby escaping from it and transmigrating from it to truth and to reality and to God. One could talk about that at long length. I haven't done justice to it, but that's the image. But I believe in the personage of the Lord Babaji, who, as I mentioned, is also a warrior, a great warrior, among other things, spiritual warrior. You have a change from that to a symbol of transmutation, which is very much of this age.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of speaks to the themes that have come out from the cosmic teachings we have here, the 9 freedoms and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that he kind of personifies that, because if he is in this position of tremendous, he's basically the political and spiritual head of the spiritual hierarchy, and therefore his influence flows throughout all of humanity on earth, that he would personify such a change in order to bring it into manifestation.
And he had to, and Dr. King knew that he had to, and so did the Lord Babaji.
So then,
it was the right time. And Lord Babaji doesn't need any explanations.
Yeah.
He knows immediately, and they both know. And as I say, they aren't the same sort of, inverted commas, person. They're different. And the Lord Babaji is this wonderful, so holy actually, that it was difficult for Dr. King sometimes to take messages from him.
Wow.
Because he was so in awe of his holiness. And Lord Babaji, in some of the earlier messages, would call him my son. And this would reduce Dr. King to tears afterwards, at least.
Yeah.
And so actually what happened is the Lord Babaji adjusted to that and changed his way of communicating. It's actually very moving. I find it very moving to talk about the love and the bond between Dr. George King and the Lord Babaji. I've seen it, close quarters. When this mission I mentioned, Operation Earthlight, was being taken on, I happened to be in America with Dr. King, I was, hearing daily blow-by-blow accounts of how they work together.
Yes.
And I do remember one time that Lord Babaji changed his modus operandi to make it easier for Dr. King and went into more of a, you might call it military way of address code.
Which would have suited him, made it easier for him.
Neither of them being like a superior officer to the other. In fact, there is a statement by the master ethereist who knows everything, that and is a great master of understatement, but he did say that they are equal in spiritual matters. I think he said there's no one equal in spiritual matters to Dr. King, with the exception of the Lord Babaji, in the spiritual hierarchy. So they were very, very closely bonded. Indeed, they worked together on certain vital combat missions, I would call them.
I think it's interesting, giving the example of Dr. King, because it would appear that Babaji has also played a role with many other avatars who've come to Earth as well.
All of them. I would say all of them. They've all, as it were, reported to him. I'm sure they all revere him. There's a wonderful statement made by the Master Jesus, actually, after one transmission. I haven't got the words in front of me, but it's along the lines of, Babaji, I will come and visit you. Because I think they must really appreciate, having been here, what he's putting up with.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really, it doesn't seem to me, and what do I know, very little, but that, it was on his watch originally. He came here for the Earth, and there was a race here before us on Earth called Adamic Man. Some people give that race other names, and they'd be more advanced. For all I know, they may not have even needed to reincarnate that race, because you shouldn't need to reincarnate. Reincarnation is an unnatural but necessary process. Ascension is a natural state.
Yeah, the state we should be in.
That's the state we should all be in. We only need rebirth because we fall away. I mean, it's slight off topic, but there's a incredible statement made by the Master Ethereist. Have I got it here? I don't think I do. But he basically does say that you...
Or is this the negatization?
Yeah, you negatize creation. That's the phrase he used. We negatize creation by not following our higher selves. And so we need to have self-judgment. That's what he says. Yeah. And of course, we require, the way we get self-judgment is through dying, going to the halls of self-judgment and judging ourselves with the help of great beings, and determining what experiences we need. Our own higher selves then, for that moment, have the power that we should give them all the time. And this is the difference between us and ascended masters.
Well, that's a really good insight, actually. It's like in that moment is what we should have in all moments, isn't it?
And if we did, we wouldn't need to die.
Yeah,
We'd never die unless we chose to renew our bodies, and we'd do that through the flame of the planet, and we'd be born through the flame of the planet as adults with the right permissions. And one of the places we'd need permission would definitely be the Lord Babaji.
Well, speaking of permission, actually, I think that's another aspect, because, and not just permission, but we talked a little bit about the role he's played with these other avatars, but in his sacrifice, he has played a role in even making it possible for them to come here and intervene on Earth, hasn't he?
Oh, yes, he has. He's taken karma. He took karma for the 3 adepts, for example, to come here. And he's taken karma through the ages. And he's not the only master who's done that, but he's the greatest that we know of on Earth that's done that.
Yeah.
And he's in a position, because he's so advanced and so great, to manipulate more karma than even a lesser master than himself. And he does and has done that. And so we owe the presence on Earth of some of these great avatars, undoubtedly, in one way or another, whether it's through him taking karma, cooperating with them. We owe it to him. But he has operated quite a bit in the background, and a great change was brought about, actually, again, shall we say, in coordination with Dr. King. And it was acknowledged by the Lord Babaji that this was a move for which he owes Dr. King, although Dr. King doesn't want anything, doesn't feel anything like that at all, not in the slightest. But he brought a change whereby the Lord Babaji has taken a more active control of the spiritual hierarchy of Earth. He was always revered by them. He was always their spiritual figurehead. But he was, and as I say, through many names. I mean, the Narada that I mentioned is described as the master of the masters, as it were. Even then, they looked to him, and he's guided and helped and engineered and been involved, and he appears, I'm sure, at all the major moves and times in our history, because he's so involved in it. But now he's, as it were, to use a word, it's not a very good word, but he has a political leadership role as well. But they don't have politics as we know it in the spiritual hierarchy.
Yeah. So, it's just this picture emerging of someone who's been here eons before humanity ever came for the earth. Then humanity has come along at some point 18 million years ago, and he's played this outstanding role in helping in the evolution of humanity, even making it possible for further divine intervention to come about for our benefit again, and has even personified this transformation in the teaching that we have been given from transmigration to transmutation.
That
sort of leading, with his influence and his inspiration.
We should stress again before we finish his connection with Mother Earth, because I do believe that's why he came here and that's why he will stay here. Whatever happens to humanity, or however we evolve, he will be here. Because they come hell or high water seems a silly phrase to use in this context, but
both have happened.
he will be here for the Mother Earth. And for example, those who are familiar with the Etheric Society tool will know of a mission called Operation Sunbeam, which is performed for the Mother Earth. They may or may not recall that it was the Lord Babaji who gave permission for that mission to go ahead.
Yes, thanks for coming back to that point.
So he is, I would think, this is certainly true of Dr. King, and I would think it was surely true of Lord Babaji as well. It might be another reason for their great bond. His number one motivation would be for Mother Earth. And number two, or down the line, would be humanity, which he's totally committed to and saving us on a daily basis just by his presence here, by the way. Just if he did nothing, but just existed here, that alters the karma of the planet completely. But above all, it will be the effect it has on Mother Earth and his liaison and relationship with her. He must have a relationship with her, and definitely a relationship, with the Lords of the Flame.
There's one other aspect I want to touch on, because I think it just adds such an interesting dimension, that you have this master who's literally working at the level of the planet, together with the Mother Earth, with the Lords of the Flame, and yet is so intimately involved with the actual day-to-day happenings of what goes on. And I think what brings that out especially clearly is the sort of connection he's had with you, the role that he's played in your own sort of progression in the Etheric Society. I know, for example, that he was responsible for approving your consecration as a bishop, that he approved your appointment in the society as a director. And so it's like, how can a being be involved at this level and then also intimately at this level?
No idea how he could possibly even, I could even cross his... Well, I know why, because of Dr. King.
Yes, it all ties together that way, doesn't it?
And it's I mean, actually, this was to do with when I became a bishop, and also we have an ecclesiastical structure in this society that we use. We're not an Orthodox church, far from it, quite the opposite. But we use that structure because there's a mystical root behind it, a mystical energy behind it. And there's some truth behind the concept of apostolic succession, which is exactly the same as discipleship succession, actually.
Yes.
And so we do. But Dr. King, being very correct, he ran it by the Lord Babaji and sought his approval with the greatest possible respect. And the Lord Babaji gave his approval. And then Dr. King decided to consecrate two people, which was his wife in America and me in England, in 1987. I was 34 at the time. And he phoned me up and said, I'm thinking of making you a bishop. What do you think? And I sort of said, well, that's wonderful, and I can see that it should be good for the UK here and the European jurisdiction to have a bishop. But to be really honest with you, Master, I'm not worthy of this. And I wasn't trying to be clever there. I really wasn't worthy of it at all. I felt, and I felt I should be honest. And I'd said that to him, which was absolutely useless from his point of view. It wasn't helpful. It wasn't constructive. And then a couple of things happened. One is that I was on a holiday with Alison briefly. We only have very brief holidays in Dr. King's lifetime in Wales. And I didn't know that Dr. King was then going to ask the Lord Babaji So that night in Wales, we had a sighting, UFO sighting. We saw 3 UFOs. Now, I was doing a lot of interviews at the time, and I was used to this, the skeptics, the disbelievers. Sure. They're not even skeptics. They're disbelievers, active disbelievers in those days. And so I was used to it being questioned. So I was questioning all sightings. It was ridiculous. We were walking outside in Wales, in southern Wales, looking up, and there were these 3 objects together in like a V formation. And I said to Alison, well, they could be satellites, which they couldn't. That's ridiculous. They couldn't be Earth satellites, in 3 of them like that. And as I said that, they flashed, illuminated, and darted off across the sky. And then I got a call in this little hotel in Wales. They've never had so many international phone calls coming in and out. Hotels from America and so forth. And Dr. King said, well, I've asked the Lord Babaji, and he agrees with you becoming a bishop. And I said, okay, well, look, then it's up to me to go out of my way to deserve it. And Dr. King said, yeah. And he said, that's the right attitude. Because it wasn't helpful to him, me getting, he had to go, and it proceeded. But it was, to me, I was like, well, it was big enough that Dr. King would do it, and then to get the approval of Lord Babaji, and then also my director, as you say, must give me a link with this great master somehow, which I certainly don't deserve at all, and I'm very unworthy of, but it is, all it makes me feel is completely devoted to him. And I think everyone on earth should be completely devoted to the Lord Babaji.
Well, there's an example right there in you, isn't it? Thank you very much,
Thank
Richard.
you.
Hey, Spiritual Freedom Show family, thanks for tuning into the show. I think that show underscores the unique position of Dr. George King and his relationship with the Lord Babaji because of their shared mission in coming here for the sake of the Mother Earth. And after all, it is because of Dr. George King that we even have this information about the Lord Babaji and the inner workings of the spiritual hierarchy on Earth, let alone the influence that he has had on the spiritual hierarchy itself and the role of the Lord Babaji on Earth today. And I think one of the things that we can take away from that episode is how intimately related and immediately relevant the Lord Babaji is, even to our own existence on Earth. We owe every moment of our existence here to him, to the divine intervention that he has made possible, to the sacrifice that he has made, and to the essential role he has played together with the spiritual hierarchy to aid our spiritual evolution and our awakening. Now, if you enjoyed that episode about the Lord Babaji, then do follow or subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future episodes that can help you to awaken your chakras, to unlock your psychic powers, and to discover true spirituality. Now, if you're interested in more right now, I do recommend checking out this video over here, which goes deeper into the story of Sri Krishna, the other master who came from the planet Saturn that we know of, and the unique role he played at the end of Atlantis on Earth, helping to preserve humanity into the future. Thanks for tuning into the show, and see you next time.